Let's be honest, your favorite childhood fairy tales are a lie. They were never really about happily ever after. They were about survival. We're about to pull back the curtain on the gruesome, uncensored original versions of stories like Snow White and Cinderella and reveal the dark secrets they were changed to hide. Forget the sparkling castles, the charming princes, and the guaranteed happy endings. The stories you think you know, the ones that filled your childhood with wonder, are sanitized, watered-down versions of tales that are far older and infinitely darker than you can imagine. Before they were children's bedtime stories, they were something else entirely: adult entertainment. They were grim folk tales, whispered by the fire on long, cold nights, filled with all the terror, brutality, and anxiety of the medieval world they came from. These were not stories made to tuck children into bed. They were made to keep adults awake, to pass the time during mind-numbing labor, and most importantly, to serve as stark warnings about the very real dangers that lurked just outside the door. The world back then was a much darker place, where famine, disease, and violence weren't shocking plot twists, but everyday realities. Children weren't shielded from these truths. These stories were meant to prepare them for a world where one careless moment could be your last. This all changed when collectors like the brothers Grimm and Charles Perrault started writing these oral traditions down. At first, even their published books were for adults. But after realizing the real money was with middle-class families who wanted to teach their kids a lesson or two, the censorship began. The stories were scrubbed clean. Wilhelm Grimm himself admitted they carefully removed every expression inappropriate for children. Things like sexual references, parents being the villains, and graphic violence were systematically erased or softened. Dozens of tales from the Grimm's collection alone were completely changed or deleted. Today, we're putting it all back. Thanks to the work of scholars like Jack Zipes, who in 2014 published a landmark English translation of the Grimm's complete uncensored first edition from 1812, we can finally see these stories as they were first told. We are going to exhume the terrifying originals of 5 of your favorite fairy tales. Be warned, once you know the truth, you will never see happily ever after the same way again. Let's start with a story everyone knows. A beautiful princess, a jealous stepmother, a poisoned apple, and a kiss from a handsome prince. It's a cornerstone of animation, a symbol of innocence. But the horrifying truth of Snow White isn't about a vain stepmother. It's about a mother trying to murder and eat her own daughter. In the very first edition of the Brothers Grimm's collection from 1812, the villain is not an evil stepmother. She is Snow White's own biological mother. Let that sink in. The person who is supposed to be her ultimate protector is her would-be murderer. This single terrifying detail was one of the first things the Grimms changed in later editions, swapping mother for stepmother, because the idea of a mother killing her own child was just too monstrous for their new family audience. They felt they had to protect the sacred idea of motherhood. But the original horror goes deeper. The queen's jealousy is so intense that she doesn't just want her daughter dead. When she orders the huntsman to take Snow White into the forest, she tells him to murder the child and bring back her lungs and liver as proof. Why? Because the queen fully intends to cook and eat them. She wants to literally consume her own daughter's life and beauty. The Disney version has the queen ask for the heart in a box, which is sinister, sure, but the original was far more primal. The story has some familiar beats. The huntsman takes pity. Snow White finds the dwarves, but the queen's attempts on her life are relentless. She tries to strangle Snow White with a bodice and poison her with a comb before finally getting her with the poisoned apple. But it's the ending, the villain's punishment, that shows you the brutal justice of these original tales. In Disney, the queen is conveniently struck by lightning and falls off a cliff. The original story has no such neat and tidy death. At Snow White's wedding, the evil queen, the girl's own mother, is dragged in front of everyone. Her punishment? A pair of iron shoes are heated in a fire until they glow red hot. She is then forced to put them on and dance in agony, her feet literally burning, until she collapses and dies. It's a slow, torturous public execution as entertainment, a theme you'll see again. Next up is Cinderella. You know the drill: kind girl, cruel stepfamily, fairy godmother, pumpkin carriage, and a glass slipper that leads to a royal wedding. It's the ultimate rags to riches story. But the version the brothers Grimm collected isn't about being patient. It's about self-mutilation and blinding revenge. First, there is no fairy godmother. Cinderella's magic comes from a tree growing on her mother's grave, a much more gothic source of power. When the prince announces a 3-night festival to find a bride, she prays at the tree, and birds come down to give her the gowns she needs. The real horror starts when the prince shows up with the slipper. In Disney, the stepsisters just can't fit. It's a funny little moment. In the original, the stepsisters are more dedicated, egged on by their mother who tells them, "When you are queen, you will never have to go on foot." The first stepsister grabs a knife. The slipper is too small, so she calmly slices off her big toe, jams her bleeding foot into the shoe, and shows it to the prince. He's fooled at first and rides off with his new bride. But as they pass the tree on her mother's grave, 2 little doves coo a warning. "Look back! Look back! There's blood on the shoe!" The prince looks down, sees the blood pouring out, and brings the mutilated fraud right back home. Not giving up, the second stepsister tries. Her foot is also too big, so, taking her mother's advice, she takes the knife and slices off a piece of her own heel. She shoves her mangled foot into the slipper, and again, the prince is tricked for a moment, and again, the doves rat him out. Some scholars see this as a grim reflection of the desperation of women in that era, willing to permanently maim themselves for a chance at social advancement. But the story isn't over. Their real punishment comes at Cinderella's wedding. As the stepsisters walk down the aisle, trying to get on the new princess's good side, the same doves that saved Cinderella swoop down and peck out both of their eyes, leaving them blind for the rest of their lives. No forgiveness. Just bloody feet and empty eye sockets. Happily ever after, right? There is no fairy tale more passively romantic than Sleeping Beauty. A princess is cursed, pricks her finger, falls asleep, and is awakened 100 years later by true love's kiss. It's beautiful, chaste, and romantic, which makes the horrifying truth of its origin even more repulsive. The version we know is a heavily cleaned-up take on a much older Italian tale from 1634 by Giambattista Basile called Sun, Moon, and Talia. In this version, the princess, Talia, doesn't just fall asleep. After she pricks her finger on a splinter of flax, she's presumed dead. Her heartbroken father, unable to bury her, leaves her on a velvet throne in an abandoned country estate. Time passes. A king from a nearby land is out hunting and follows his falcon into the abandoned house, where he discovers the beautiful, seemingly lifeless Talia. He calls to her, but she doesn't wake up. The original text says he was overcome by her beauty, and after he felt his blood course hotly through his veins, he gathered the first fruits of love. Let's be crystal clear. From a modern perspective, the king rapes the unconscious princess. After the assault, he just leaves her there and goes back to his own kingdom. But it gets worse. While still in her coma, Talia gets pregnant and gives birth to twins, a boy and a girl, attended by magical fairies. One of the babies, trying to nurse, can't find her breast and starts sucking on her finger instead. In doing so, the infant accidentally sucks out the poisoned flax splinter. This is what breaks the spell. She wakes up from a years-long coma to find she's the mother of 2 children she has no memory of conceiving. When the king finally remembers his adventure and returns, he's happy to find Talia awake with his children. But there's a problem. The king is already married. His wife, the queen, finds out about Talia and the twins and flies into a murderous rage. She orders the king's cook to kidnap the children, kill them, and serve them to the king for dinner. The cook, a good guy, swaps in 2 lambs and hides the kids. Not satisfied, the queen then orders Talia to be thrown into a massive fire. Just as she's about to be killed, the king returns, discovers his wife's plan, and has her thrown into the fire instead. He then marries Talia, the woman he raped. The story ends with the most chillingly inappropriate moral ever. Those whom fortune favors find good luck even in their sleep. It's no wonder this version got a major rewrite. If you're finding this hidden history as shocking as I am, do me a favor and hit that like button to let me know. Now, on to our next tale. The story of Hansel and Gretel is one of the first horror stories most of us ever hear. Two kids, abandoned in the woods, find a house made of candy, only to learn it's a trap set by a child-eating witch. Even the common version is terrifying. But the originals are rooted in the very real, desperate horrors of medieval life. In the first edition of the Grimm's tale, the woman who demands they abandon the children in the forest isn't a wicked stepmother. Just like in Snow White, she's their biological mother. This is a story about a mother willing to sacrifice her own kids to survive a famine, a real and terrifying fear in pre-industrial Europe. The mother's cold logic, "It is better that we two live than that all four of us starve," is the true horror of the tale. The gingerbread house itself is a perfect predator's trap. It preys on the children's most basic need, food, to lure them in. The witch is the stranger, offering a salvation that's too good to be true. But there are even older, more disturbing versions of the lost children trope out there. One French variant doesn't have a witch at all. It has the devil. The children don't find a candy house. They find the home of the devil and his wife. And the devil doesn't just want to eat them. He builds a sawhorse and plans to have them bleed to death on it, like a ritual sacrifice. The ending of this version is a masterclass in brutal survival. The devil's wife tries to show Gretel how to get on the sawhorse. The kids pretend they don't understand. When she demonstrates for them, they slit her throat, steal the devil's treasure, and run. In this version, Hansel and Gretel aren't just clever kids who outsmart a witch. They are child murderers who kill their captor's wife without a second thought to survive. They don't just push her in an oven, they slit her throat. It's a chilling reminder that in the world these stories came from, innocence was a luxury you couldn't afford. Our final tale is maybe the most famous cautionary tale of all time, Little Red Riding Hood. A girl in a red cloak, a path through the woods, a sick grandma, and a sly wolf. In the versions we know, a hero, a brave woodcutter or huntsman, always bursts in, cuts the wolf open, and saves the day. But in many of the oldest European folk versions, the ones told for centuries before being written down, there is no rescue. There is no woodcutter. There is no happy ending. There is only the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood gets eaten. The end. That's it. That's the story. A girl is told, stay on the path, don't talk to strangers. She doesn't. She gets eaten by a predator, and that's the consequence. The story was a brutal, unflinching lesson. In medieval Europe, the forest was dangerous, and wolf was often a code word for predatory men. The story was a clear warning about sexual predation. When Charles Perrault first wrote the story down in the late 17th century, he kept that grim ending. He even added a moral at the end, explicitly warning pretty well-bred young ladies that the most dangerous wolves are the charming ones who talk their way into your home. It was the Grimm brothers who later added the huntsman. This one change completely altered the story's DNA. It went from a stark warning about consequences to a drama about a last-minute rescue. It suggests that even if you mess up, someone stronger will show up to fix it. This is the perfect example of how these stories were softened, replacing the harsh lessons of the original folk tales with a more comforting but much less powerful narrative. The original story taught a lesson you'd never forget. The modern one tells you it will all probably be okay. And as we've seen, in the original world of fairy tales, that was almost never the case. So there you have it. Cannibalistic mothers, self-mutilating stepsisters, rapist kings, and children who become murderers to survive. These weren't just stories. They were reflections of a brutal reality, storehouses of cultural anxiety, and guides for navigating a world filled with real danger. They were never meant for children. They were warnings for adults. The process of censorship, driven by a changing audience and the desire for profit, stripped these tales of their most disturbing and powerful elements. Sex, parental cruelty, and shocking violence were all cut or softened into the stories we know today. In doing so, the publishers didn't just make the stories more palatable, they erased the history that gave them their meaning. They took stories about survival and turned them into stories about romance. They took cautionary tales and turned them into fantasies. The happily ever after you grew up with was a marketing ploy designed to hide a much more horrifying and, frankly, more interesting truth. Which of these original fairy tales shocked you the most? Was it Snow White's mother, Cinderella's stepsisters, or the horrifying ordeal of Sleeping Beauty? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed digging up these hidden histories, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into the stories you thought you knew. Thanks for watching. If you would like to know if this is all a myth or all reality, take a look in the comments.